TriCaster Studio is a live production system that offers the ability to switch camera inputs and incorporate real-time keying, titling, audio mixing, live streaming, virtual sets, and more. The TriCaster operator switches between cameras that may be connected to the system from various locations on the field. What does the TriCaster operator do? Pre-game, they create and import video clips and graphics, set up and test video inputs, which includes cameras, DVD players, or any other device that may be coming into the TriCaster. Works with the display control operator to test the output signal to the display. During the game, takes direction from the director, switches the camera feeds, plays back video clips, commercials, player headshots, photos, etc., and also works with the replay operator.
Hello and welcome to this Get Started video for the TriCaster Broadcast. TriCaster Broadcast is your all-in-one portable live production facility that allows you to set up in minutes and deliver a television-style production from anywhere to anywhere. The TriCaster itself is a small device, a little bit bigger than a shoebox, which is completely portable and sets up in minutes. The first thing that we want to do when we're setting up our TriCaster is assemble the hardware portion of the device. As we look at the back of the device, we can see that depending upon the version of the broadcast that you have, we either have connections for a keyboard and a mouse as PS2 connections, or the latest revisions of the TriCaster broadcast have USB only. We have an Ethernet connection. This is a gigabit Ethernet connection, allowing us to connect to a network at gigabit speeds. We have a variety of USB and FireWire connectors. Now, the video monitor for the interface of the TriCaster gets connected to the video card. The video card is the card that has the DVI output and the RGB output. And most of the time I will connect my interface monitor to the RGB output. It could be connected to either. Just remember that whichever output of that video card that you don't use will be your VGA output for the TriCaster. So I'll connect my monitor to the VGA output. You'll notice next to the video card there is a card that has two 15-pin connectors on the back of it, and there are plastic covers over these. That's on purpose. That card is not for your use, and you should keep those covers on and not use those connectors. Once we have our keyboard, our mouse, and our monitor cable connected, and our Ethernet cable connected if it's applicable, we're ready to go around to the front of the machine and connect our audio and video sources. On the front of the broadcast, we see a variety of connectors down the left side. These are our video inputs. First, we have our tally light connectors. These are just mini jacks that are designed to work with a 5-volt tally light system. This can be something as simple as an LED soldered to the end of a cable that's plugged into this jack. Next, we have the connectors for connecting all of the different types of video that we can bring into the TriCaster. This can be component, composite, YC, or SDI. We can see that one of the posts is marked composite. This is where our composite signal is going to come in. If you have an RCA cable, not a BNC cable, the TriCaster does come with a variety of BNC to RCA adapters. These can be used to use a standard RCA patch cord and connect to the front of the TriCaster. If we're going to be using YC or S-Video, the TriCaster also comes with an adapter that adapts 2 of the prongs on the front of the TriCaster into an S-Video jack. And the 2 prongs that we're going to use are these 2 prongs right here. And you'll notice one of them has a R over the top. It's R-Y. That's where you're going to connect the red BNC connector, and the green one is going to go into our composite output jack. Component, we have 3 wires. We have RGB, red, green, and blue. So the R-Y is your red wire, the B-Y is your blue wire, and then composite is where your green wire will go. Now, if we're using an SDI signal into the TriCaster, we simply connect to the SDI BNC connector. Notice we have 4 audio inputs on the front of the TriCaster. These can be either 1/4-inch jacks or XLR connectors. Either will go into this jack. It's a combination jack. We have a variety of audio outputs. First we have our headphone out, and we can plug our headphones in there, or this could be used as a secondary audio output. It does have an independent volume control in the mixer inside of the TriCaster. And then we have 1/4-inch out and RCA audio outs from the front of the TriCaster. Next we have our video outs, and the top row is our program video out. Again, this can be component composite YC or SDI. And if you're using SDI, for instance, your composite is also still live. So you do have several different video outs hot at the same time coming out of the TriCaster. Of course, depending upon which connectors you're using, this will determine what's available to you. Just underneath that, we have a row of outputs that can be switched into 2 different modes. One can be a hardware preview monitor, where we can actually have an external monitor showing us the preview bus. Or it can be switched into an effects mode, which allows us to output to a switcher with alpha channel only to use the TriCaster as a graphics device to feed another switcher. Underneath that, we have our AES EBU audio connectors for digital audio into the TriCaster, and we also have our Genlock connection to Genlock the TriCaster to our cameras if we should so desire. Now that we have all our audio and video connections connected to the TriCaster, let's go ahead and fire it up. Make sure that you have your power cord connected to the back of the TriCaster, and if you try to fire the TriCaster up with the power button in the front and you get no response, you might want to check the small switch on the back of the power supply to make sure that the power supply is also turned on. When we first fire up the TriCaster, we will be presented with a screen to register the TriCaster. You can either do this online or by calling NewTek customer service. You definitely want to get your TriCaster registered. It comes with a specific amount of time allowing you to use the device before it times out, but once it times out, until you register it, you'll not be able to use your TriCaster. So make sure you get your TriCaster registered right away. And again, if you have any issues with that, you can call NewTek customer service at the number on the screen. The first time you run the TriCaster, it's going to ask you if you would like to calibrate the device, and click OK. The TriCaster will calibrate itself and be ready to go. This process will take just a few minutes. Once you've calibrated the TriCaster, you won't have to do this again unless we reset the configs in some future point. Once you fire up the TriCaster and you get past the registration splash, it's going to take you directly into the TriCaster interface itself. But we're not quite ready to be here yet. I want to set the TriCaster up and talk about a couple of different modes that we can run within. So let's go to our administration screen. We do this by clicking on the small X in the upper right hand corner and clicking on the admin button. The administration screen allows us to do several things with our TriCaster. We're going to talk about configuring the TriCaster. Right down here in the lower right-hand corner, we can click on Configure TriCaster. This will bring up our TriCaster configuration options. Now, I'm working with a multi-standard version, which allows me to switch between PAL or NTSC. You may only have NTSC available to you here. This is where we can select our aspect ratio if we want to work in 4:3 or 16:9. And we can also run in 2 different modes. We can run in the 6 independent input mode, or we can run with the ISO monitor mode with only 3 inputs. And we're going to take a look at both of these different ways of running the TriCaster. We're going to start out running in the 3 input mode. And this will actually eliminate inputs 4, 5, and 6 on the TriCaster, making it a 3 input switcher. But it does have some advantages over the 6 input mode. Let's go ahead and launch the TriCaster. In the 3 input mode, we actually have ISO preview monitors for our incoming cameras. I only have 2 cameras hooked up right now, and we can see that we have camera 1, 2, and 3 displayed right on the interface. And this shows us our live incoming video inputs to those 3 inputs. We also can see whatever's coming in on our external channel. This could be an external computer source coming in through IVGA. We have our 2 DDRs. These are our 2 internal video playback devices. Our background generator and our black input for fading up and down to black. One of the things that I like about the 3 input mode is I can actually use these monitors as part of the switch. And what I mean by that is whatever is currently going out live is always going to be represented by the red box around whatever that input is. And whatever is currently on preview is represented by the green outline. Simply by left-clicking on any of these inputs right on the preview monitor a single time puts that input into preview for me. So a single click gets us into preview. A double click will actually cut that to live. So double clicking allows us to cut right to an input, and again, single clicking allows us to bring that input into preview. This is very handy when you start running a switch and you want to visually select what input you want to switch to next. We also have our preview and our live output monitors being shown on the interface here, and these are showing us whatever is currently on the live bus and the preview bus. The preview monitor is multifunctional though. It has a pop-up just below it. This allows us to change the preview monitor into a waveform monitor, chrominance and luminance, or just luminance, and a vector scope. Let's take a look at the 6-input interface and see how it's a little bit different. Back in the administration panel, I'm going to go back to Configure TriCaster, and I'm going to select the 6-input mode and go ahead and relaunch the TriCaster. Here in the 6-input mode, you can see that we've gained 3 inputs on our switcher, inputs 4, 5, and 6, but we no longer have our isolated preview monitors. We can now have previews of our 2 DDRs, our external source, this would be an incoming computer via IVGA, and we have our waveform monitor vector scope actually displayed over here. Again, you've got a pop-up right here for changing the waveform monitor vector scope into its different forms, and we also have a quad view button here, and if we turn that off, it will take our waveform monitor vector scope to a full screen over there in the corner. I'm going to go ahead and switch the TriCaster back into its 3-input mode for the duration of this Get Started video. Everything that we talk about will work exactly the same between the 3-input mode and the 6-input mode. The only difference is the difference in the interface that we've already discussed. Once we have all of our video inputs connected to the front of the TriCaster, we're ready to set them up in software. We want to go to the Input Setup tab in our TriCaster, and this allows us to access our proc amp controls. Right at the top of the Input Setup tab, we have a pop-up menu which allows us to select which input we're going to be adjusting. But right next to it, we have a button called Follow Preview. Go ahead and make sure that Follow Preview is turned on so that the little blue light is actually lit up. And Follow Preview sets up the TriCaster so that whatever input we have currently on the preview bus is the input that we're going to be modifying with the controls down here in our Input Setup tab. Depending upon what sort of video input we're using, you'll have different controls available to you in the proc amp area. If we're using YC or composite, we can use brightness, contrast, hue, and saturation. If we're using a component signal, we can use the U and V offsets. We also have the ability to auto-calibrate the proc amp if we're using component, composite, or YC. This means we can turn our camera into color bar mode and it will automatically set up the camera for you. As you can see from the pop-up, we can set to 75 or 100% bars. I usually flip my camera into color bar mode and set it to 75 bars, and it sets up the proc amp for me. Now, if I'm manually adjusting the proc amp, I can of course adjust brightness, contrast, hue, and saturation. But I may make a mistake. And if I do, double-clicking on any one of these knobs resets that individual control back to its default position. If I have manipulated all of the controls and I've gotten everything way out of hand and I just want to get back to square one, you can always click on Restore Defaults and it will reset all of the controls back to their default position. We also have a termination control here. If you plan on looping the video in and out of an input, you may want to be able to terminate that input, and that can be done using the termination control here inside of your proc amp. Now we simply go to input number 2, input number 3, and we make sure that all of our inputs are set up, the processed appropriately, and we're happy with all our video signals. Again, you always have the ability to use your waveform monitor and vector scope to make sure that these signals are legal, or you can use these devices to match your cameras. Now let's go ahead and take a basic tour of the interface. As we mentioned before, the top portion of the interface here is my preview area. Allows me to preview some of my inputs into the TriCaster. Also allows me to preview the preview bus and whatever is going out live. We do have some controls here for this monitor, and these controls only adjust what's on screen. It is not adjusting the output. So these are only to adjust your on-screen or in-display monitors. We also have a button for bringing up our zebra. This allows us to see hotspots within our video. We have an illegal button, which allows us to see if we have any illegal luminance levels, if we're too bright or too dark. And we can also switch into underscan mode if we want to. Again, these controls only adjust your in-display monitors. They have no effect on the output of the TriCaster. Next, we have our switching area, and this is where we can control the switch. We have our live bus, and this is what's going to go out live. Again, if I left click and punch anything up on my live bus, it's going to immediately cut to that input. We have our preview bus, and this allows me to select things into preview before I make a transition, a cut, or a fade to that input. We have our T-bar area and our auto and take. Take will cut between the two sources. Whatever's on live and whatever's on preview are going to switch places. Auto is going to affect whatever transition you currently have selected in the transition area over here. I'm going to select the fade, which is always the first effect available in every bank. We have 5 banks of transitions available over here, and the fade is one in the upper left corner. With the fade selected, if I click on auto, we will get a fade between whatever's on preview, out to live. Now we have sample out a lot here. The enter key, either the one on the numeric keypad or the one on the numeric keypad, they both do the same thing, and they will execute a take or a cut. The space bar on your keyboard is the same as the auto button, and it will execute whatever transition is currently selected. Now, in our transition area, as I said before, we do have 5 banks of transitions available, and the TriCaster comes with a wide variety of DVEs, or digital video effects. So if I don't want a cut or a fade, I can simply click on one of the DVEs and then execute it by hitting auto or space bar. And you see we get a nice fancy transition. Again, there are a wide variety of these. We have 3D DVEs. We have classic trajectory, classic page peel type DVEs. And if we go through our banks, we have classic wipes, fades, and again some very unique 3D DVEs that are only available to you in the TriCaster. Now, if I want to change the DVEs that are available in any of the banks, or bank 5, it's empty. If I want to populate bank 5, I have an add button right here. I simply click add. This is going to pop open a requester. Now, whenever you're looking at a requester inside of the TriCaster, we have some shortcuts down here, and these allow me to instantaneously navigate to certain directories. So transitions should be one of your options. If you click on transitions, it will bring you to your transition folder. Inside of the transition folder, we have some more folders full of different types of wipes, our 3D wipes, our blinds, our compressions, our page curls, fades, trajectories, wipes, and then some different types of crossfades. I'm going to go into 3D, and again, these are all transitions that are available that come with the TriCaster. I'm going to move this over a little bit, revealing the banks of effects. Now, if I want to use one of these effects, I simply left click on it, drag into the position where I want it, and let go. Now, if I click on it one time, it's ready to go. Again, space bar to execute that effect. Even if I am on a bank that's already full of effects, if I click add, I can left click and I can drag an effect over the top of one of the existing effects to replace it. Click on it, and it's ready to go. Now, you may have noticed that when I click on an effect, we've got this little ready light right here. And as I click on an effect, it takes a few seconds sometimes for that light to turn into ready. Effects like a fade, it's going to be instantaneous. But on the fancier 3D effects, it may take a second for it to load. And another thing to be aware of is the fancier the effect or the longer the effect, the longer it's going to take to load. And if we're doing more things in the TriCaster, if we're playing things back from our DDRs, if we're using the CPU for other things and using the hard drive access, the time it takes for that DVE to be ready. If you should happen to execute a DVE before the ready light is ready, it's simply going to run the last DVE that was loaded into the system. Except for the fact it's not going to play the DVE that you thought it was going to play. It's going to play the last one. So just be aware of the light. Make sure that light goes to ready and it's a solid blue line, and the selected DVE will play for you. Now, DVEs can also be run in reverse. We have a reverse button right here that allows us to run them in reverse, or, as I said, the space bar, go ahead and do the transition that's currently selected. If you hold down Shift and the space bar, this will run that DVE in reverse. This can be very handy, especially when you're talking about something like sports production. Very often we will want to fly an instant replay or slow motion into the scene. When that instant replay or slow motion is complete, we want to fly it back out with the exact same effect that we flew it in with. And using the space bar and the shift space to do this is a very easy way to accomplish this. We also have variable speeds at which we can run the transitions. We have slow, medium, and fast available to us by clicking on these buttons. And we have a little knob next to that, which you can actually dial in speeds in between or greater than fast or slower than slow. I use medium speed as my default transition speed most of the time. I have an advance button, and the advance button will advance to the next DVE after executing a DVE. So if I click on the first one and I turn the advance button on, we go ahead and do that transition. As soon as that transition is complete, it will load the next transition. I do that one. As soon as that transition is complete, it will load the next one, and so on. We have, as I said, 5 banks of effects to choose from, and we can populate them with the effects that we want. And we do have direct access to not only the banks but also the effects using the keyboard. Using the numeric keypad on the keyboard, the first number that you type in is going to take you to the associated bank. So again, if I type in number 3, it's going to take number 3, it's going to take me to bank 3. The next number that I type in is going to take me to the effect. So if I type in 1, it's going to take me to bank 1, and then the number 1 takes me to the first effect. If I type 1 and 2, it takes me to the second effect. 1 and 3 takes me to the third effect, and so forth. So again, if I went to bank number 4 by hitting 4 and then typed 3, it's going to go ahead and load up the effect in that bank for me. Right next to the transition bank, we have our overlay section. And the overlay section is where we control the graphics, both still, motion graphics, scrolls, and crawls that can be overlaid over the top of our live video source. We'll cover the overlay section in detail a little bit later in the presentation. Just below that, we have our audio mixer. The audio mixer allows us to mix our 4 incoming audio signals that are coming into the front of the TriCaster with any internal audio sources that we have inside of the TriCaster. We have 2 DDRs inside the TriCaster. These could be playing video clips that have audio associated with them, and we might want to use this mixer to mix the audio coming from our DDRs in with our external audio. We also have an AES EBU slider that allows us to mix in the digital audio that we have coming in to the front of the TriCaster as well. Now, the audio mixer is a tabbed interface. We have an advanced tab. This allows us a little bit of equalization, and we can also pan the audio to the left or the right. We also have a setup tab, and this allows us to choose the type of input, whether it's mic, line, or variable gain, and we can even supply phantom power, and we have a little bit of trim. Now, we also have the ability to solo any of these tracks to the headphones. This is our headphone volume control, and again, this is independent from the master volume control that we have down here. So we can solo single or multiple tracks simply by turning them on to the headphones so that we can hear them before they go out live. On our 4 incoming inputs in the front of the TriCaster, we also have talkover. Talkover will dip all of the rest of the audio in the TriCaster, making whatever you're selecting as your talkover channel dominant over everything else. Then when you turn talkover off, it will readjust all the audio. We also have a mute button down here, which allows us to mute any of these tracks. And the 4 incoming inputs in the front of the TriCaster can either be 4 independent inputs, or we can lock inputs together and now they work as a stereo input. To the left of our audio mixer, we have our modular tab-based interface, and this allows us to access all the rest of the power in the TriCaster. We'll cover each one of these tabs in depth. We also have our record live output and our stream live output buttons. These are associated with the record and stream tab, and this is how we activate the ability to record our final output back to the TriCaster or activate our live stream out of the TriCaster. Again, we'll cover this in detail as we get into recording and streaming. We also have 4 tabs along the top of the interface, and everything that we've been working with right now has been in our live production tab. We also have a capture media tab for capturing clips and other types of media into the TriCaster. We have an edit media tab, which is our full-blown nonlinear editor that comes with the TriCaster. And we have our edit text tab, which is our full-blown character generator that comes with the TriCaster. Also notice that we have an output showing us the current mode that we're in. We're in ISO mode, which is our 3-camera mode, and we're also in NTSC at 16:9 aspect ratio. Now with TriCaster Broadcast, we also have a configure button up here, and let's go ahead and click on that. This allows us to choose the output mode, whether we're going to be outputting in either YC or component. This does not affect the SDI output. So again, this would be a secondary output if we're using our SDI output. We can also use a component output or a YC output or a composite output. Now we can also set up what our preview monitor is going to be using as an output. So again, that was the second row of video outputs on the front of the TriCaster, and we can set that up to output component, YC, and again SDI would be hot there as well. We can also set it up to whether or not we want to use the preview out as an alpha channel out from our configuration button here. And our alpha channel out can be set up with a delay, and we can adjust that delay using our control right here. We also have some gen lock controls down here for setting up our gen lock if we are gen locking the TriCaster with cameras or into house sync of a studio. Basic overview of the TriCaster interface. Now let's go ahead and take a look at actually doing a switch with the TriCaster. So when we're doing a switch with the TriCaster, we have our live bus. We punch things up on the live bus to send them out live. We can select what we want to go live on our preview bus, select a transition, hit the space bar to affect that transition. Again, in the 3-camera ISO mode, we can bring things up on preview by single-clicking them up here in our preview monitors. Double-clicking would take them live. This is only available in the ISO 3 input mode. When we go to the 6 input mode, you cannot use the previews of your DDRs or your external as ways of bringing things up on preview or cutting them live. You have to do it from the preview bus. We have some keyboard shortcuts that help us with this as well. On the alphanumeric portion of your keypad, above the letters, you've got numbers 1 through 9. These will bring up things on the preview bus. So punching these numbers on your alphanumeric keypad will allow you to bring things up on preview. The F keys on your keyboard allow you to punch things onto the program or the live bus. So F1 brings up input 1 live, F2 brings up input 2 live. So it's as simple as finding what I want on my preview bus, selecting a transition, hitting the space bar, find the next thing that I want to bring up live on the preview bus, select whatever transition you might want to use, hit the space bar. Again, always remember that if I bring something up down here, I can simply hit the Enter key to instantly cut to it. The DDR inside of the TriCaster is a powerful media playback device. It allows us to play back video clips, audio clips, and still files. Let's go ahead and take a look at how we use the DDR in the TriCaster. The DDR is found in the DDR tab in the TriCaster Broadcast and Studio. It's found in the DDR and Picture tab in the other versions of the TriCaster. And it, again, allows us to play back a variety of file formats. All of the clips that we're going to play back inside of the TriCaster's DDR are going to come from the internal drive in the TriCaster. Now, we can get these clips into the TriCaster either by capturing them through the analog inputs in the front using the capture panel in the TriCaster, which we'll cover a little bit later. We could also use the USB or FireWire ports to hook up external hard drives or thumb drives to get clips onto the hard drive. We also have a gigabit Ethernet connection in the back of the TriCaster, allowing us to connect the TriCaster to any network and bump clips across the network into the TriCaster's hard drive. Once the clips are on the hard drive, we're ready to load them into the DDR. We see our DDR right here and all of its controls to the right of it. If we have two DDRs, the controls to the right are the controls for that DDR. So we're going to work with DDR number 1 right now. And as we look through its controls, we can see that we have a selection and a list mode. Now, once we have some clips loaded up, selection is going to play just the clip that's currently selected, and list is going to play the entire list of clips as one project. We also have the ability to loop either the selection or the list. We have a counter which shows us the progression through the clip, and one thing about the counter is you can click on the numbers of the counter to toggle it between a count down and a count up. I prefer using count down as it shows me how much time I have left in that clip before I have to transition out to another element in my live production. Here we have our transport controls. We have stop, play, rewind, fast forward, and pause. We also have a cue mode, which we'll talk about in just a moment. We do have a jog shuttle down below, which allows us to shuttle through the clip. And we also have some variable speed playback controls. These are actually buttons that we can press while we're playing the clip back to play the clip back in slow motion, a little bit faster, a little bit faster, again, normal speed here, and you can see that the play button engages when we click on the normal speed button, and then faster than normal speed. Clicking on the yellow button in the middle puts us back into stop, and then we have all of the same controls going in reverse. Down at the bottom we have our file I/O. This is where we can add clips. If we want to add clips into the DDR, we click on the add button. It will bring up our requester. Inside of the requester, again, we can click on the clip shortcut to get us to our clip folder. And from within the clip folder, we can add clips. Now, we can hold down the control key, and the TriCaster will remember the order in which we click on clips. And when we go ahead and load them, they will load in that order. We also, if we hit the add button, can directly drag clips from the bin directly into the DDR. Once we get clips into the DDR, we can go ahead and put them in whatever order we want the clips to play back in, simply by left clicking on them and dragging them into the order that we want them to play back. Now, one thing to keep in mind when working with clips, especially large numbers of clips, is when we load a clip into the DDR, it does a little bit of processing on this clip. It wants to create the icon for the front and back and things of that nature. This takes a little bit of processing time. But if you're in the middle of a live production and you dump 50 clips into a DDR and they've not been recognized previously, it's going to have to go through the process of recognizing each one of these clips. And if you're doing other processes inside the TriCaster at that time, this can cause the interface to slow down a little bit, or even stutter, or momentarily lock up. It will come back and your output should not be interrupted, but you will have no control over the interface for a short period of time. A way around this is to make sure that any clips that you're going to use during your live presentation, load them into the DDR ahead of time before the presentation starts and let the TriCaster recognize them. It does write them into a cache file, and once they've been recognized one time, it doesn't have to recognize them again. They will instantly show up and be available for playback from that point forward. Now, we also have a remove button down here, and this is to remove clips. Again, if I select a clip and hit the remove button, it will take it out of the DDR. Of course, it's just removing it from the DDR, not from the hard drive. Now, we can also select a clip and just hit the delete key on the keyboard. We can also multiply select clips. We can either click on a clip and hold down Control for multiple selection, just like in Windows, or we can click on a clip and hold down Shift, and it will select all the clips in between the two clips that we select. And again, if I wanted to get rid of them, I could just hit the delete key on the keyboard or the remove key. Now, we also have a clone key. Clone key will allow us to clone a clip. So if I have a clip that's pretty long, I'm going to come down here and clone this clip a couple of times. And I have the ability to set in and out points on clips. Notice that when the mouse is over the left side icon of the clip, it turns into an in cursor. And on the right side icon, it's an out cursor. So this means I can set an in point for the clip, and I can set an out point for the clip. So again, if I've got a clip that's reasonably long, I could come through and I could clone it a few times and then set different in and out points for each iteration of the clip, in essence doing some basic cuts-only editing right here within the DDR. Now, what kind of file formats can we play back as far as video in the DDR? The DDR will play back a wide variety of file formats, but we recommend using either DV Type 2 AVIs or using our own file format that comes with the TriCaster. The reason being, even though the DDR will play back clips of other file formats, different file formats use up different amounts of CPU overhead. So we want to make sure that no matter what you're doing in the TriCaster, you can do everything that the TriCaster does simultaneously. If we put, for instance, HD clips in there, which you could do, and it would play them and scale them, it's going to take a lot more CPU overhead to do that. So if I'm trying to do many other things, record the output, stream, archive the stream, do a switch with virtual sets and motion overlays, I may get to a point where the CPU can't handle it. If you use our file format that comes with the TriCaster, you're never going to have this issue. Our file format also supports alpha channel, so you can use it in just about every case that you would ever run into in a live production. So we have load and save playlist, and these allow us to do exactly that. We can set up a list of clips and we can save them as a playlist. We simply click Save Playlist. We navigate to where we want to go. And again, when we're navigating in the requester, in the TriCaster, you get the path along the top here, and any portion of this path is clickable. On TriCaster, it's going to take me to the root. Now I click on my D drive, I go into Media, I go into Clips, or in this case, I'll go into Playlists, and this is where I'm going to save all my playlists and load my playlists. So I can simply give this a name. This is Playlist A. And now, if I clean this out, I'm just going to left click and drag a box over all of the clips inside of the DDR and hit the delete key. If I want to get those videos back, I simply say Load Playlist. We load up Playlist A, and I instantly have all my clips back. Now, as I said before, we can also play back audio from in the DDR, and there is an interesting way of using audio clips along with other media in the DDR. I'm going to go ahead and clean out this playlist, and let's say I wanted to play back a few still files. I'm going to go ahead and find the still images, and we support a wide variety of file formats: Targa, PNG, JPEG, most of the normal file formats. And again, if I want to bring these pictures in a specific order, I can hold down Control and click on them in the order that I want to bring them in, and then go ahead and click Open. They show up in that order, ready to go. Now let's say that I want to play this as a slideshow, and I want to have a music bed underneath it. Well, the first thing that I can do is, each of the pictures comes in at 5-second duration. I can change the duration simply by hovering over the end, either end of the clip, and adjusting the length. I'm going to leave them at 5 seconds. If I want to play music on top of this, I could, if I have a second DDR, play it from the second DDR. But even if I'm just working with one DDR, I'm going to go ahead and add a music clip. And let's go ahead and just bring this music clip down. And I'm going to drag it right into the DDR, and I'm going to make it the second clip in the DDR. I'm going to go ahead and click on the very first clip and tell the DDR that I want to play the list. When it starts playing this back, it's going to play the pictures and the music. Let's go ahead and bring up this DDR, and I'll hit the play button. So as you can see, we can drop a music clip right in underneath either the first video clip or the first still, and that audio file will play throughout the entire project while the rest of the media inside of the playlist plays back as well. Now again, loading and saving playlists is very valuable here because I make a playlist of all my stills. We could also create a play clips for, let's say, hour 1, hour 2, hour 3, so we can streamline the workflow. So we're not trying to wade through long lists of clips to find what we need. Everything is right there at our fingertips. Again, as long as we load all the clips in and let them process before we start our live production, playlists will load up practically instantaneously, allowing you to change out all of the media that you have access to inside of the DDR. If you are working with a TriCaster Broadcast or a TriCaster Studio, you have 2 DDRs, and I recommend your work a little bit. Use one as your still store and one as your video playback. Use one as your audio bed and one as your video playback. You can also use the DDRs as an overlay source to do motion overlays over top of your live video outputs. We'll talk about that when we get into overlays. But again, when I have 2 DDRs, I like to prioritize. So I'll put all of my overlays in DDR number 2, and I'll put all my video clips in DDR number 1. That way I never make a mistake playing the wrong type of clip at the wrong time. Now, we also have the Q mode inside of our DDR, and the Q mode is the most powerful feature of the DDR in my opinion. I'm going to go ahead and clean out some of these videos that we have in here right now. And again, I'm going to simply go to Load Playlist, and I'm going to load up Playlist A that we had a little bit earlier. And I've got several clips in here defined, even though some of them are defined out of the same clip. It doesn't matter. They all have different in and out points, and each clip has its duration right here. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the DDR, I'm going to select the first clip. We're going to put it in selection mode. We're going to make sure that loop is turned off, and we're going to put it in Q mode. Once it's in Q mode, it's an automatic DDR. And what I mean by that is I'm going to bring it up on preview. I'm going to choose a transition that I want to use to switch to it, and I'm going to hit the space bar. And as soon as I switch to it, it plays the clip. The clip pre-rolls and plays. Again, I'm in countdown mode. I see how much time I have. I'll say, let's come back to camera 1. Let's go ahead and use a different transition. Okay, we're back in 5, 4, 3. The TriCaster does the transition automatically when the clip is done playing back to whatever camera you have selected, and queues up the next clip in the DDR. As you see in the DDR now, the next clip is already queued and ready to go. The only thing I need to do to activate it is to switch back to the DDR. I simply hit the space bar. That clip starts playing. Again, let's go to camera 2 when we're done, and let's use a fade this time on the way out. I see my countdown. We're back in 5, 4, 3. And again, the TriCaster switches back to me on camera and queues up the next clip in my DDR. It's like having a virtual tape operator built right into the TriCaster, always pre-rolling the clip for you and queuing up the next clip after the last clip has been completed.